I've spent about 10 or so hours so far with All Aboard Studios' recent release, West Coast Mainline Trent Valley. And I've ran 2 timetable runs, I've done all the scenarios, and I'm ready to give a review. I've got a decent list here of, well, it's very bright, isn't it? Jesus Christ. Hello? There you go. There you go. Got a bunch of notes. Both positive and negative, so hopefully this will be a somewhat in-depth review that will help you decide whether at the quite expensive price of £32.99 whether this is a DLC worth it for you, or one probably worth waiting for in a sale. I've got the gameplay running. I'll give my review, let you know my thoughts, and then I'll disappear and let you enjoy the rest of the run without me waffling away in the background. I do also want to release a full run with the 350/4 as well. Hopefully I'll get to that at some point. I don't know. Also, with all the points I'm gonna make, I would have liked to also add pictures and videos of those particular topics and points that I'll be talking on. Fortunately, I'm very tight for time, and I wanted to get this out as early as possible for you guys to help you decide before you go spending your hard-earned money. So without much further ado, let's get into it. So I'll start with the positives, work my way down to the negatives, and then I'll let you guys know my sort of overall thoughts. Just to sort of prefix before I get into it, I'm playing on PC and my specs are, I've got a Ryzen 7 5800X3D CPU, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM at 3600 megahertz, and an RTX 3080 Ti GPU. So if you're here to know whether this will run without blurry issues and texture issues on consoles, you may want to take some information from here, but you also might want to head over to a different channel or another ambassador where they'll be talking about the console experience more specifically. So positives, first point I've gotten here is dense line side foliage. I don't know why that was a bit of a mouthful, but yeah, dense line side foliage. This was the first thing I noticed, and it struck out to me as something quite cool, like quite good. Like it made the scene feel alive. That doesn't extend, unfortunately, further than the line side. I'll get onto that probably when I touch on my negatives, but for now, dense line side foliage specifically. I've also got here dense signage as well, which is something I wouldn't necessarily pick up on, but I did for this one, and it actually does increase the realism feel and the immersion feel, seeing so many signs, whether we're talking on the stations for pretty much everything, whether we're talking line side, like track access signs, just so much going on in terms of the signs, and that sort of coupled with the foliage actually enhances the immersion by a decent bit, in all honesty. Scenery, I actually went into this before I even experienced a single run or anything that this DLC offers. I thought to myself, we've got enough West Coast Mainline content in the game already. It's gonna be 3 or 4 tracks side by side, a bunch of OHLE, and the same fields over and over and over again. But I'll tell you what, yes, although the scenery is similar in terms of when we get to like fields and countryside, it's actually not exactly repetitive as you might think, or as we've seen in previous routes. It does change like quite a bit, like it does look different as much as it also looks the same, and it doesn't get boring, I'll be honest. Look, countryside is countryside, it is what it is. Like it can only be so different, right? But I feel like with the limited options All Aboard had to make the scenery refreshing, I think they've done a pretty good job, in all honesty. Something that was seen in Matt's playing of the run on the preview stream, I worded that a bit weird, but anyway, on the preview stream basically, you may have noticed a brand new TSR, which is very cool. It shouldn't be, because the situation of TSRs, gonna digress a little bit, the situation of TSRs shouldn't be what it is. They're crap, in all honesty. It's always 40 miles per hour or 70 kilometers an hour, if I'm not mistaken, on European routes, and it lasts about 50 feet, and then it's done. And it's just like that every single time. So it's finally good to see that we've got something other than that. It's a 75 mile an hour TSR and extends for a lot longer. However, unfortunately, we've got the same issue as we had with the previous one, where I've encountered 3 or 4 TSRs so far, and they're all 75 miles per hour, and they're all exactly what feels like, because I can't measure it, but they're all the same length. So it's like, it's good, but not really. I'll let that be something you judge though. High speed passing sound effects. Now, I noticed this doesn't actually happen all the time. It seems to depend on whether you're moving or not, how fast you're moving. And it also seems to depend on what train you're driving and what train's going past you as well. But if you've been on a train and you've had a high-speed train pass right beside yours, there's almost like a slam sound that occurs. Like it sounds like doors slamming almost. And you actually get that. But again, it's not all the time, and it's not with all the trains. So your mileage may vary with that one. But the fact that it is in the game at all, I thought was quite cool. The route looks gorgeous in the snow. It looks beautiful. When you've got just snow, there's no snow falling or a blizzard or anything like that. You just got a blanket of snow across the scenery. It is gorgeous. Definitely worth a try. Similarly to the 805, and I think one of the other 800 series trains, the interior is beautifully illuminated. When you've got the cab light off and you've just got the lights coming off the buttons, whenever you go into a tunnel or if you're doing any nighttime driving, it is gorgeous. The assets, in terms of the buildings and the houses, there's only so much different assets that are available in the game as we've seen so far, and there's only so many different types of buildings we have in the UK. Like in terms of like the sort of Victorian era houses, they almost all look the same. And yes, there are parts of the route where you do have just straight up copy and paste buildings, but for the vast majority, and for 108 miles, vast is quite vast, you actually do have quite different house assets and building assets, and they do actually fit in with the scenery. They don't look out of place as we've had in other routes. Whether they're just generic Unreal Engine assets, I don't know, but they do look like they fit pretty well and somewhat add to the realism, in all honesty. Now, in terms of the scenarios, I'm not gonna lie, I've only got 2 positive points that I've written down for the scenarios. For the rugby transfer, and this is a bit of a spoiler, so I don't know, you might want to skip ahead a little bit. For the rugby transfer scenario, I thought it was quite a nice touch, adding visible engineering work being done with NPCs on the track, and even a 66 with wagons that was parked there as well. There's basically engineering works going on during the scenario, and it's just good to see that. A lot of the time in scenarios, and I've criticized them so much, yes, an ambassador being critical, we're here, we're alive, we exist. I've criticized scenarios so much in the past for being so boring, so generic, so low effort, and this was a nice touch to see. Like, I don't think it cost much for AABS to plot down some NPCs and a 66 with some wagons. Snow Troubles had an NPC at one point actually shoveling snow, which surprised me because, as you'll see in the negatives, I had an issue of NPCs not really doing much. But this was really cool to see. So hopefully there'll be more of that in the future. Like, I feel like developers maybe underestimate how much we appreciate a living world, like within the railway, and seeing like actual engineering work going on. not engineering work going on, sorry, but seeing like actual work going on of some sort. It was very cool. And that's pretty much all the positives I've got for this one. So let's head to the negatives, of which I think there are a few more than the positives. I'll mention them, and I guess, ultimately you can be the judge of whether you think the positive outweighs the good, or the bad outweighs the good. If you think the positive outweighs the bad, or the bad outweighs the positive. So the first thing I've got, track shadow. This bothered me so much, and some of you actually noticed it during the preview stream. It's horrible. It really is horrible. You cannot ignore it, and I'm sorry if you're someone who wouldn't have noticed otherwise, and now because I've mentioned it, you're going to keep an eye out for it. Watch some gameplay, watch my gameplay, watch my stream, watch another ambassador, go back to the previews, watch any video of the route being driven, and you cannot miss it. It's horrible. I had to like work to like put it in the back of my mind, but I don't think it ever was. You can't ignore it. It's really hard to ignore, really, really, really hard to ignore. And alongside that was late loading assets, or assets that seem a particular way, but then you get closer and then they like fully load in, if that makes sense. You'll see it the worst in the trees and on the, I guess, like legs of the OHLE, where there's almost like this white blob on every single post until you get near it, and then it just vanishes. Again, something so hard to ignore, and I understand that this was probably done to help with optimization for the route and help it run smoother, but I do wonder, how far can we push the trade-offs for performance before it doesn't really become worth it anymore, and then the bad experience we would have had from, or not, obviously it depends on your platform, but the bad performances or the bad experience that someone would have had on their consoles becomes a bad experience for everyone with issues like this. Like I said, it's very hard to ignore because you're going so fast. It's like everything's coming at you so fast, so you feel like everything's in your face. And this was something else that really, really bothered me. My third point for the negatives that actually might not bother anyone, I'm a big journey mode guy. I use it as my measure of progression through the game and on the DLCs. And unfortunately, and I understand why this was done, but I wish that we had an option to choose. I don't know why that's not a thing. The journey mode uses the reduced timetable. So if you're like me and you're somebody who goes to complete the journey modes, if you're in a system capable of running the full timetable, you're forced to make do with the reduced one. And for the first time ever, and if you know me well, you've been here long enough, you're going to know this is actually quite a big thing for me. I'm not going to do this journey mode. I will do the runs on there in the full timetable. Like, I will look for them, I'll do them in the same day, whatever, but I'm not going to do the actual journey mode. I just cannot sit with an empty timetable or a bare bones timetable knowing that I'm capable of running more. The Trent Valley wayfinding scenario, which was the first one, so that basically is almost like a sightseeing tour in a way. Like, you're going through the stations, and it's one of those ones like we've seen on the Mildmay line and other DLCs where it tells you some information about the stations. It doesn't do it while you're loading passengers. So you'll be driving, you'll get to the station, you load the passengers, you lock the doors, and then it starts to tell you the information. So you're kind of just, the trains just stood there a bit awkwardly between loading passengers and moving. And I don't know why they couldn't just give you the information while the passengers were loading. Quite a minor issue, nothing crazy, but something I thought was worth noting. Performance. You may have noticed both lists aren't really in any particular order. I think performance, if I had to organize this as an order, would probably be near the top. So if you're on PC and like me, you use mods, I, prior to this installation, removed all of my mods, every single one, and that performance was atrocious on the full timetable. And I gave you my specs earlier, and usually 4K max settings, I can run the game completely fine. However, I just couldn't. And so I said, okay, maybe something's going on. Let me just do a clean install just in case. And so I did so, and afterwards it was smooth as butter until, for some weird reason, I would encounter a 170 or a 171, either the cross-country ones or the West Midlands Railway one. The Voyager would be fine, going past the Voyager. Going past the 66 would be fine. Going past the steam loco for the rail tours was fine. Going past a Pendolino, basically anything other than a 170 or a 171 was a problem. Really, really weird. I don't know if that's something that everyone will encounter, but it was something that I encountered. And aside from that, it was fine. I am curious to see how consoles are going to perform. I'm a little bit worried, in all honesty, but I'm not going to speculate. We'll see once the game publicly releases and everyone has their very loud opinion to say on the forums. Another point that I had on my negative list was motionless engineer NPC. So I was quite happy to see the NPC shoveling snow previously, but that was one of very, 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 very few occasions where the NPCs were actually doing anything in scenarios, in multiple scenarios where there was engineering work going on. And it's just kind of trash. And it's not just the engineering work, but also just the lifting of the hand. I think it's on one of the modded timetables or an enhancement pack for one of the previously released routes, where a modder was able to add NPCs that just stay there with their hands up. Obviously, it would be nice to have an NPC that actually reacts to you sounding your horn. You're meant to sound your horn as a driver if you see workers on the track, and they're meant to acknowledge you by lifting their hands above their heads. And cool, if we can't get actual motion and that sort of intelligent reaction from the engineering NPCs, then at least just have them posted there with their hands up. But to just have them standing still, it's just a bit, dare I say, low effort. So that goes for the workers that are just by the track, workers that are meant to be working, workers that would in reality react with your train. The 350/4, its notch 1 has 2 settings from my experience playing on a keyboard and mouse. So you stay on notch 1, but you press the key a little bit, and then you'll see that it says on the side notch 1, but there's no power being applied. And then you push it again, and then you hear a click, and then power starts being applied. Really, really weird. I doubt this is how it is in reality. If it is, I'll hold my hands up and say I'm wrong. But regardless, it just feels really weird. The 66, and maybe this is a 66 specific issue, headlights. You'll see the headlights cone, you'll see the light reflecting on the floor, for example, as the 66 is driving, but you won't actually see the headlights on the locomotive. But this doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes it would happen, sometimes it wouldn't. Other times you'd see a 66 with tail lights on at the front, a whole different issue. But nonetheless, it's on the route, so worth mentioning. And my last non-scenario negative, a weird one, but something you may notice, and again, sorry if it is something you wouldn't have noticed without me mentioning it, but when there's animals placed on the fields, cows and sheep, I've taken trains through the countryside before as a passenger. I've driven through the countryside, and you see various animals, horses, sheep, goats, cows, whatever. You'll see in a particular square space area, a particular number, enough for them to be spread out. Various points alongside the route, it seemed like there was about 50, there'll be 50 cows together or 50 sheep together, and this happens various different times, and it's really weird, and it stands out because sometimes they'll be in the far distance or they'll be closer, but it looks weird. It looked like there's way too many cows or way too many sheep, and it actually kind of breaks the immersion a little bit. Again, I don't know if this is going to impact everyone, but it was something that I noticed and I thought was worth mentioning. Onto the scenario issues now. The A Troubled Evening scenario has some weirdness with the announcements. It's one of those scenarios where something happens and you end up changing sort of plans for your stopping pattern, and I think that messes things up with the announcements. They were correct for what you do, and then they changed towards the end and were incorrect, but then they corrected themselves. So I don't know. That same scenario, A Troubled Evening, at Polegate Station, you are instructed to leave the train and head and check out a potential wheel flat further down the train. I found when I got out of the seat, I couldn't move. Nothing I tried worked. I even tried to teleport using Control 0, I think, no, Control Plus and Control Minus, to go through all the seats in the formation, all the driving seats, and that didn't work either. Every time that I'd stand up and just be stuck. I tried to crouch, couldn't move. The engineer's seat, or the second man's seat in the cab, was too far away to teleport there. There's no step down option when you open the door, so I couldn't sort of use that to get out. So I was just stuck, and the only way I could fix it was by reloading. So something you may encounter, and if you do, save the game, reload it, then you should be able to stand up and get out of your chair. I think I loaded the game I saved the game while I was standing up, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that played a part as well. And again, on that same scenario, all my negatives with the scenarios were, aside from the NPC things I mentioned earlier, were with this one scenario, A Troubled Evening. When you go to inspect this supposed wheel flat, you just go towards that area, and then the subtitles say, okay, like basically you've checked it, now go back and report back to the signaler. I would have liked to actually had to inspect a wheel flat. It would bonus points. I don't remember if there was one or if there wasn't. If there was one, it would have been nice to actually visually see it. If not, it would have been nice to actually take a closer look rather than just going to that area of the train and then being told, aha, yay, it's done now. So again, low effort ultimately. And all in all, that's it for my negative and positive list. Overall thoughts, £32.99 is expensive, but you do get a lot, I think, especially if you're able to run the full timetable. Now, I don't think the full price fits for the reduced timetable, and I do think there should be a way for Dovetail or All Aboard Studios to separate the pricing for the timetables, because it's not fair that you're going to pay £32.99 and get everything, all the layers unlocked, and a smooth performance experience, and then the next person who's on maybe an Xbox Series S can't do the full timetable and is going to suffer with, may suffer with texture issues, and also has to pay for £32.99. I don't think it's nice, in all honesty. So for the full experience, a full fat experience, especially if you've got all the layers, I think it's worth £32.99 in my opinion. For the reduced timetable, I don't think so. Now, I'm going to suffix this before you guys beat me to it. Yes, I'm an ambassador. Yes, I didn't pay for this. So maybe if I had to pay for it, my thoughts would be different. So take that as you wish. But my opinion, in my current position, is at £32.99. It's worth a look. Let me not even say it's worth it. It's worth taking a look at. It's worth considering it. It's worth maybe taking a pop if you're not really happy with it, especially if you're on Steam. Get your refund if you haven't played 2 hours. But for sure, 100%, £32.99 for the reduced experience. Not worth it in my opinion. Compared to Birmingham to Crewe, if I'm going to throw this one in as well, it definitely feels like a smoother first step, right? Birmingham to Crewe from the get-go is a bit funky. This one feels a lot smoother. Again, I'm on PC. I'm on what I would call a mid-end PC by today's standards, and my experience will vary from somebody who's on a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series S or X. So many variations for me to say concretely it's a good experience or it's a bad experience. Your mileage likely will vary depending on your system. So my advice, you've watched this, watch the next person's and the next person's and the next person's content, make an informed decision, and hopefully, whichever way you go, it ends up being the right decision. Hope I've been able to help you one way or another. Hope you enjoy the rest of this video. Till next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, stay safe. Health is wealth. I'm probably streaming this right now, so it's worth checking that if you're watching this as it drops or on the day that it drops. And I'll see you there. If not, I'll see you when I see you. Take care. Peace out.
We are now approaching. Crew, please mind the gap when leaving the train and step onto the platform before removing heavy luggage and pushchairs.